A motion by Helmut.
Welcome to Minutes by Minute. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we're here to talk about what goes on in the village, the township. You know, those government people that make laws and regulations that affect you out there.
That's right, Elgin. And whether you live in the village of Oxford, the village of Leonard, Addison Township, or Oxford Township, these are the people that you went and elected. And the commissions and the committees that make decisions that directly affect you, whether you chose to go to that meeting or not, and the result can be a
Taxing.
situation.
It could very well be. And you know what? There's also humor that either bubbles to the top or floats to the bottom. You have to dig it out, but it's there.
Yep, you can laugh at it either way.
Right. And one of us kind of spreads a few rumors. That would be this guy, pretty much.
But I always rely on my compadre here to confirm them.
I have to back him up. I'm told, you know, in my contract, I have to do that. So that's the way it works.
Right or wrong?
Right or wrong. Okay. Well, you know, there are a couple of meetings that occurred the other day. One is Oxford Village Council meeting, which was rather kind of interesting. We'll talk about that. And the Oxford Township Board of Trustees meeting, which was just held last night, actually.
Two biggies.
Yep. And actually, during the trustee board meeting, there was a special meeting preceding the regular meeting. And we will talk about that.
It was
But
a
first,
double header.
Yes, double hitter. And talk about double hitter, let's get back to the Oxford Village Council. It was held on January 8th. Joe Frost is the new president of the Village Council. Dave Bailey is the pro tem, and Maureen Helmuth serves on that board, and Kate Logan, who's the newest member of the board. Joe Medor, who's the village manager, was there, and Bob Davis, the attorney, and they don't go far without the attorney, and Terry Onika is the clerk treasurer, and she was doing the recording that evening. So first thing they did is got the preliminaries out of the way. Almost didn't get that out. They did the Pledge of Allegiance, of course, and all the goodies that follow, the agenda and so forth, and then let's jump right into it. The first issue.
The Pledge of Allegiance was really officially started by the Eisenhower administration?
It was, huh?
Yeah.
How'd you know that?
Just stuff you pick up along the way, like a Rolling Stone.
Okay. That is an interesting thing. And you say he didn't invent the Pledge of Allegiance.
He didn't invent it. It was invented by a pastor of a church. And it just became more and more popular, and finally it was accepted.
And how did Ike get a hold of it? He's known as Ike. See, if you know him really well, like I did, Ike.
When you're general of the Army and President of the United States, you get a hold of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, if you folks don't know, Eisenhower was a 5-star general in the Army.
That's right.
Pretty powerful guy, and very potent during the war, as you well know.
Ask any German.
Ask any German. Ask any German, they will know. Right. Okay. So first thing they wanted to talk to in this meeting, which I'm going to get back again, is the snow ordinance, and we have discussed that before. And Kate Logan was rather concerned that the snow removal program was adjusted for senior citizens, because not every senior citizen can grab a plow and get out there or a shovel and do the pathway. And so they had quite a discussion about that. And actually, the attorney said that there are certain liabilities, because Kate Logan said, how about having the village clean these walks for these folks? And he said, if you take on that responsibility, and if anything happens, of course, the village is responsible, cost-wise.
Complicates the insurance policy.
It does. So he said that's not a very maybe direct approach to take. Joe Frost said, you know, what about Boy Scouts, you know, organizations such as that? And apparently Joe Medor had talked to a number of groups that contacted the main office, and they volunteered that they would provide support, you know, from school kids, you know, from the high school.
Now,
for these
what
purposes.
specific things were they going to be clearing off?
Sidewalks.
Where?
In front of their homes, you know, for the residential areas.
The entire residential area of the village of Oxford?
No, only for people that, you know, are maybe veterans that are injured
or
in the war.
Incapacitated because of age or whatever? Okay.
Right.
So they might have like a special flag on their house to indicate that that's the appropriate one to do.
Well, actually, that's a neat idea. But Rose Bema, she said, you know, you have a new website for the village. You folks should understand that there is a new website that has just been developed. And she said there should be a page on this, if people have a question, they can go to it and see who they can contact for this purpose. Now, I don't have a problem, with my snow out front because my wife is very well trained. And
Ooh.
no,
And she may be listening.
yeah, she says the snow is deep. Get out there and shovel it.
I
So that's
see.
what I do. You probably do too, right?
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, that was a good idea Rose Beam I had, and Mr. Madore wanted to talk about the penalties that were involved, and Kate Logan, she chimed in and she said, now the first penalty is $50 fine. She said, I think that's really high. She said, I think that should be cut in half to $25, and the second fine, which would have been $75, should go to $50, and then the final fine, $100 if they,
Well, there's
within
another
a 3-week
Yeah, there's another problem, of course, is that
result.
if you belong to an organization that's volunteering to do this, do you also accept the liability for doing it or
You
not
do.
doing it?
You can accept that liability if anything happens.
Do you have to?
Do you have to? A nonprofit organization, I don't know exactly how they handle that. Do you?
No.
Take a note.
No, but I mean, is it still the homeowner's
Responsibility?
responsibility if an injury occurs because that particular day the volunteer didn't show up and shovel off his walk?
No. Yeah, I would say if that person didn't have their snow removed, it would still be the responsibility of the individual owner of the property. If the person was contacted, didn't show up, again, it goes back to the homeowner. It's their responsibility to make sure it's clear. So all they're saying is that there are people out there that are willing to roll up their sleeves if you give
Right.
them a contact, and they'll come out and take care of it.
That's true, and
Free gratis.
but
one
it's
way.
not an
If you
obli-
like a tip, give them
But
a tip.
unlike the village contracting or an outsourcer contracting to do it, it's not obligatory.
Right. Once you contract a legal agreement,
Right.
then there's an issue involved if anything happens.
But if it's strictly a voluntary thing, yeah, I can do that. That's, if it ain't on paper, it doesn't exist.
Well, it's hard to say this day and age. A lot of things exist when they're not on paper, but at least some people allude to that.
Yep.
So anyway,
Judges.
Yeah, judges. It depends on what judge you got, of course. Makes a difference. If they follow the law, then certainly if there's no contract involved, I would say there wouldn't be an issue involved other than with the homeowner, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, that being settled, they did have quite a discussion on this, and they said, well, what we have is an ordinance in place right now. And Kate Logan, she says, oh, wait a minute. What about the warning in advance rather than fine? And actually, what was stated then, Joel Madore said, that's not a good idea. And the attorney, he chimed in, and he said, we ran into this situation in another city concerning parking areas.
Using a warning?
Yeah, that the warning didn't work, because what would happen is these people with the warning would show up wanting to present their case to the council or to the village,
Yeah.
and one day, according to the attorney, 17 people showed up. So, you could tie up the administration and not get anything done.
Well, that's only because someone else got busy.
Right, somebody else got busy. Right, so that could be the point. But the point they had was that wouldn't be a good idea. They need to stick with the ordinance requirements that they have. That it is in place, and if you're not conforming with it, you would be fined.
Tell it to the judge.
Yep, talk to the judge. And talking about the judge, we'll be back to judge this further when we come back right after this, folks. Welcome back, Minutes by Minute. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
We had quite a spirited conversation here in between.
That's right.
didn't we? Okay, well, we're talking about snow right now. And anyway, Joe Madore and also Joe Frost said that downtown should be more strict. And the question came up
About?
can they district areas that are more strict than other districts?
That sounds like Animal Farm.
It does.
All animals are equal, but some are more equal
Some
than
are more
others.
equal, right? And we know that too. But anyway, so what it came down to was the attorney said, well, it could be done. It's not really recommended because it's quite a process to do that.
And how do you discriminate?
That was his point.
I see.
Yep, that there should not be. So anyway, so that was kind of set aside, and I think the agreement was that they would bring it back. It was approved, the original ordinance that they had in place, which is not the change in the fees, the citations. It's the old citation fees.
Is it a
But they're going to readdress it.
Is it a progressive thing? That is to say, your first fine is 50 and
Right,
don't do it again because the next fine will be 75?
right,
Is it?
yep.
Okay.
And then if it's within a 3-month period,
We
it
take
will
your
be
house.
$100. No, $100 each time
I
after
see.
3 months.
It levels off at
But then
100.
it starts over again. It's considered a year's winter.
I see.
In other words, which begins in October, I think, until the snow stops falling. That's considered a winter,
Sort
according
of a-
to the attorney.
Sort of a variable period of time.
It is, yeah. And actually, if it's anything like we have now, we're going to get rain more than we are snow, which is okay.
I can't see how anyone's complaining now. Everyone's pretty much of a pass.
Right, winter hasn't come yet. It's still going to be coming. You can count on it. Keep
A
your snow
little
shovels
late.
out. A little late. Okay, so the next thing they talked about was that the candidates, they needed a candidate for the village council. As you do know, Eric Dolan resigned, and so that left a vacancy. And so that was a subject that Joe Frost wanted to.
No one has
Clear
stepped
up.
forward yet?
Yep, there's a couple of things that they covered here. One is they wanted, the planning commission has a vacancy also, actually 2 vacancies, so they covered that first. And Leslie Pilak had completed her term, but had mentioned that she wanted to be reappointed. So that was approved for another 3 years for Leslie Pilak on the planning commission. Another gentleman, Justin Ballards, who's an Oxford resident, and he's in a local business and very much interested in being on the planning commission to get his feet wet, and he will get them wet in the planning commission
Was he
for
at the
another
meeting?
3-year term. Yeah, he was at the meeting.
They interviewed him?
Yep, well spoken. And
What's his last name?
He's Ballards.
Okay.
And then the DDA, of course, had a vacancy, and the recommendation was to put Michelle Klein, who owns Blue Ivy Store, on that particular board, and the village council approved it for a 4-year term.
Okay.
Let me see what else we've got here. Candidates for village council position. Yep, we covered that. Okay, marijuana was the next thing you want to talk about. Let's smoke it up, buddy. Allowed to be sold from in-town businesses. Recreational marijuana, should it be allowed?
Or not.
Or not. To be or not to be?
I have
That is
a
the
feeling
question.
I know what the answer was.
What was the answer?
You got the words. I've got the choice.
No, put it on next month's agenda.
I tabled it?
They tabled it, yes, till the next
I mean,
meeting.
they've been dipping this in and wrinking it out for a long time.
Right, they want to check the radius, in other words, how close it is to schools, that kind of thing, according to the new law.
Did Lake Orion approve it?
Lake Orion, they did approve it.
So that's really
They
close.
got their own little marijuana farm
So
over
that's
there.
that's really close. How about Metamora?
Metamora, I'm not sure what they did. Do you?
Nope. And you got Lapeer
Brandon
north of it.
didn't do anything.
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
are you going to be an island of being
Well,
dry to marijuana, I guess you'd call
Well,
it?
here's the thing.
And be
you
surrounded by
cannot
people that
have-
sell
well,
it?
Even people that drive through town, you can't stop them if it's legalized.
No.
But unless they're driving like
Well,
this,
well, right.
it could be a problem.
Could be intoxicated.
But the law requires you be so far away from an educational facility or a school.
to sell
There
it
is one
as
right
to
downtown.
sell it as a business.
sell
one
it as a
what?
business.
There's one what?
There's a school facility
Oh,
downtown.
okay.
So that would pose an issue. I think it's got to be within 1,000
It's
feet
a
or
school
so.
facility. Well, it's the
It's a
district
school.
headquarters.
Yeah, school.
Is it technically a school?
Yeah, this is a school. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's an
pretty sure.
administrative office.
Yeah, school owned. It's school. Do you say school? Okay. Anyway, So
I just wondered.
So they wanted to
I
check
thought
the
if
radius.
children were involved, yes.
Yeah, they want to
But
check the
if it's
radius
strictly administrative
capability
thing-
before they make any decisions as to who can do what.
Yeah, well,
Which makes sense, actually.
you could end up being an island of purity in the middle of all the marijuana
you
sellers.
could be that, yes. Manager goals and objectives was the next thing. Economic development was a concern for the commercial and industrial area, and that was approved. I guess they did a layout of what was required. And then the goals and objectives for the village clerk treasurer was also discussed briefly. You folks can gain more information by going to occtv.org,
Click on program.
and bingo, there you have it. Pick out the one that you want, the meeting you want, and you can see it in its entirety. This is
see it.
actually the abbreviated version that we have.
Yeah. We don't
Yep.
edit anything,
Right.
which is why people have to mind their P's and Q's when they talk.
That's true. Now, I want to get back to the Eric Dolan resigning from village council. There's one position open. They had 3 people that had applied for this, and all candidates really looked really good for this in terms of background. But they did select Allison Kemp for the term to expire November 2020.
Is that Kemp or Kent?
Kemp, K-E-M-P, I believe it is.
Okay.
And I think, I'm sorry, and it's for a term of 3, let me see, 3-year period, I think, is what it's involved. So
Or
anyway,
Is that true, or when is the next election that people would be up for?
actually, they're going to have a special election, I think, this summer, but there's nobody that's actually due, to run for office then.
Okay.
So it would be in the next general election, more than likely.
I just maybe I had
years.
the wrong idea. I thought an appointee, once another election came up, would be required to run for office, actually.
Okay, now let me just backstep here a little bit, which I don't do very often. I'm going to backstep just a little bit because Allison is going to fulfill the remaining term of Eric Dolan.
Okay.
So, and I think he's been on the board for about a year, 2 years maybe.
Oh, okay. And
at the most.
what's the term?
3-year
Okay.
term.
Well, that covers
Yep.
that.
And Allison was approved a 3-to-1 vote, so she will be sitting on the board. DDA contract, M24 Task Force. The design company, who's Grissom Metz company, has done the streetscape and laid it out, and they've been working at it from day one. And actually, even before day one, because they did a proposal about 4 years ago.
And they have to
Which they
do
did
this
at
in
Brent.
coordination with MDOT too, don't they?
And that's correct. And they've been working with MDOT. And right now, they're looking for the engineering architectural cost of $129,300. And it was approved to get that contract moving forward.
Is that just the DDA area?
Just the DDA. And when we come back, we'll wrap this one up and go on to the next meeting.
Alrighty.
Yep. Welcome back, minute by minute. We've been talking about the village council. One last thing.
Hey, wait a minute. I get to say something.
No, you don't.
I'm Dave Kenny.
Oh. I forgot to fill you in on the contract lately.
I see.
Anyway, the last thing the village council talked about was the Comcast agreement, and that was for franchise fees. 5% fee, they have to set a contract with Charter
And PEG.
and PEG fees for 2%, and that was approved.
It's not Comcast.
Well, that's what they called it.
No, they can't say that because it's Charter.
I know, it's Charter, but they said it was Comcast contract. That's what they said, and if you don't believe it, check us out. Come to our occtv.org.
Charter's going, yeah, you go ahead with that.
Right. It's true. Well, we know here
We're
because
free.
we're here, and they're going to sign the agreement with Charter. There's no getting around
Yeah,
it.
they'll
because
probably have
that's
to
the only
change that
thing
word
available.
then.
Yeah, they should do that, shouldn't they? All right. So that pretty much took care of the village council. Now let's talk about the Oxford Township Board of Trustees. Bill Dunn is the supervisor of township and is the chair.
He's a good man.
He is. Joe Ferrari, Curtis Wright, they're all good people. You elected good people for the township. Margie Payne, she serves as trustee. Patty Durr is on that board. Jack Curtis and
Having previously polished up his halo?
Yeah, right. Kelly Richter was the one doing the recording that evening. And first of all, they had a special meeting. And the special meeting involved the opinion from the attorney,
Is that a
the
closed
township
session?
attorney. It was a closed session.
Ah.
And what it evolved around was the County Road Commission assertion that the township owes them approximately $238,000.
Yikes.
Yep, for repairs on Wood Trail.
Oh,
Remember
is that
where
the big sinkhole?
Yeah, the big sinkhole, the culvert.
I thought they settled all that.
Well, they did the job, but they're claiming now that the township is responsible for it. Now, keep in mind, the county owns all the roads in your township. And they were actually alerted 3 consecutive years that this was a spot that was deteriorating. And at the last report that they had for inspection, they said it was in a disastrous situation. It needed to be replaced or repaired.
Ooh.
And they did not respond.
Sound like a good court case to me.
Yeah. So, but what it came down to when it was all said and done, there's quite a conversation carried on in private. When they came out of the meeting, the agreement was that a committee would be assigned to arbitrate with the county because they don't want to go to court with it if they don't have to. They don't want to establish a precedent in the state of Michigan that because once you buckle, it's not your responsibility for it. It's just a domino effect. Everybody in the county or in the township or in the state that are involved with county road commissions are going to have the same issue if there's a repair to be done. So
Was it their infrastructure? Was it the county's infrastructure that failed?
it was. What they did is they put in a metal culvert instead of concrete.
Concrete.
Interesting enough, the new one is concrete. So,
Uh-huh. We learn.
we do. So anyway, they did learn that, and there will be more to be learned by the time we're done here.
Or
'cause-
paid.
Yeah, there's a lot more to this detail that I can't disclose, because it's in a private meeting.
We have ways of making you talk.
Not on this. You couldn't do it. Okay. Let me see. So then after this meeting, the special meeting, they had the regular meeting. And of course, they had the pledge, went through the preliminaries. All the same people were at this meeting also. Nobody was absent. They got to the public part where they talked about not agenda items. And pretty much the same people stood up. Bruce Myers, he stood up and he was concerned about ordinances, and he spent some time discussing those issues. Kelly Rossner Myers, she also spoke about representation and also a comment about the $6,800 complaint that she had for text amendment change that they submitted to the township. And apparently, yeah. Now, I'm not that familiar with text amendments, but apparently they want to make a text amendment to the ordinance. And I believe that there's a fixed rate that they charge from the township, and that rate is $6,800.
To make a text amendment?
Yeah.
But how does an individual make an amendment to an ordinance that isn't voted on by the responsible council or committee?
Well, they use as a premise the state regulations that are out there, and also they have to have an attorney, write this thing up. They can't just submit something to the township and expect it to be accepted. So it has to go through a lot of hoops in order to get to that point.
But ultimately, does it have to be voted on by the responsible council or commission or whatever?
I'm not at all sure if that's the case. I'm not sure how it works.
It seems like an odd way to get changed to a government regulation.
But the objection is the amount, $6,800. They said for an amendment change, that seems rather expensive, and I have to concur in that. $6,800. However, if it is the procedure, and it is what people have to pay to do this, and it's been established as the norm for the township, then I guess I'd dig in my pocket and I'd pull up the $6,800 and get it done, if it was that important to get done.
It may be cost-based on once
On
you
the
start
type of work.
once you start that process and finally get that amended ordinance. Maybe that's roughly the amount of money that ends up being spent.
I have a feeling that it's the process and the clerical portion of it that they have to do as well. And not to mention about the legality of it.
Yeah, it's not, well, it's either punitive or it's actually cost-based, one of
That's
the two.
exactly right. Yep. So,
Okay.
like I said, depends on how important you want it to be. If it's that important to you, if that's what the requirement is, $6,800, here you go. Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Yeah.
You can use his credit card if you want. I use it all the time. Okay, but it was a concern that Kelly Rossner had. Another gentleman, Jim Eunice, I believe his name is, he said a lack of concern by clerical people that work for the township. Not being there to see what occurred, no television monitors or anything to observe what his objections were. I really didn't want to comment too much on this other than what his point was.
Okay.
Okay. Special Assessment District, SAD, okay, to eliminate endangered species. You know those dastardly little
Well, wait a minute.
rascals show up?
Eliminate endangered species?
Yeah, to get rid of them,
Well, wait a minute.
to kill
Are
them.
you using the right word, endangered species?
If I'm not, you will give me the word. What is it?
Annoying, destructive,
There's that again.
but not endangered.
Not endangered. Well, they'll be endangered because they're going to wipe them out. Okay, they want to kill the endangered species and get rid of them.
Are we
they're
talking
taking over
animal
lake.
or plant?
Plant?
Plant.
Did you want to talk about animal? You don't want to kill the fish or,
Well, you didn't quite.
or the little beavers?
You didn't
or-
quite narrow it down initially.
Well, I got a feeling he's going to narrow it down. So anyway, that was approved, by
Invasive.
the way. Invasive species. Those guys. Okay, but that was approved. Boy, that was a lot of conversation we had there, wasn't it?
All the deer took off.
And the quail and everything else in sight. Okay, there were a number of people that really felt that this was the right way to go for the lake. There's one person who objected to it. His name is Dennis Cardigan, and he felt that there's to treat the lake, is to poison the lake, and the other people felt that it was a good thing to do. And by the way,
Well, is there a what would you call it? A after effect on animals that you didn't intend to hurt?
no, they don't light up in the dark or anything if they drink the
Oh,
water.
well then. Okay, as long as it's that specific.
No, they're good. Okay. So anyway, so that was approved. It went forward. And that's because the township really has very little to say about it. It's all based on a petition taken up with a majority of the homeowners that live on the lake.
But the county,
We-
is
we
it a
will
county
approve-
thing or is it
It's a
a
township.
township thing?
So township
But
has
ultimately,
nothing
they
do
have to
with
vote to do it.
it. Well, no, they only vote if they don't have enough petitions or enough names on the petition. They say, it doesn't, it's
Then
not
it's
approved.
then it's just automatic
It goes
Have they got enough
forward.
names on the
If
petition
there's enough
then?
names, then it goes forward
to
to engineer it and to arrange for the payment.
right, but it's in effect de facto approved.
It is.
Okay,
Okay. I'm glad you figured that one out. I have my.
just had to use the right words.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the right words, marijuana ordinance was also discussed, and we'll hit that quickly. It was approved as far as the ordinance is concerned, but there's going to be limitations as to what they can do and can't do. And
Once
that's-
again, leaving the village kind of
leaving
isolated
the
if
village
if
rather
they go the other way.
isolated. Yep, you got it. So what's coming up?
Okay, we've only got two meetings. On 121 at 6 o'clock, the Village of Oxford Downtown Development Authority, and on 124 at 7 o'clock, the Oxford Township Planning Commission. And that's it.
That's it. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
Catch you next time right here on Minutes by Minute.